Healing Soul Podcast, empowering wellness and oneness. I'm your host, Marybeth Rombach Nelson, and I'm excited. I have a wonderful guest today, Phillip Wilson. Welcome to the Healing Soul, Phillip.
Hey, it's nice to be here. It is so much fun to talk about one of my favorite topics in the world, which is that which we are, and our existence, and the fact that we can't not exist, and the awareness of it, and all the spiritual principles that I've discovered from getting into the moment and being in the now, and that you just open yourself up to everything, the freedom, the subsequent ability to absorb love and to let it flow through you.
Beautiful. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your spiritual background and journey?
Yes, I'll be glad to. I'm turning off my sound so the phone doesn't ring. That's important sometimes. I basically I grew up in a Jewish home that was not at all religious. They were into the Jewish heritage, but not at all into the religion. My father was basically very proud of his Jewish heritage, but more or less an atheist, and my mom didn't talk about it much. So I was a sort of like a child prodigy in mathematics, as was my older brother, and I was published nationally in high school magazines for problem solving for high school math students. I also finished second, third, and fourth in the state of Indiana on national and statewide math exams in college and in high school.
Wow.
So that was my background, and then um, it's funny. My younger brother likened me to my mental energy. He likened me to Spock in Star Trek. That's how he saw me. As I was very mental. People could see I had a strong mental, a strong mind, a good mind, but I was not a feeler. And so meanwhile, I had a trauma with a girlfriend who I'd been dating for 3 years, and she found another boyfriend. This is February 1970, my senior year in college. And I basically, my whole world was destroyed emotionally. And so I was like walking around for a zombie for a couple days, coping with the shock that she and I were never ever going to get married or anything like that, and that we were not an item. So basically, I had a realization at the time, based on my background. I had a realization, and that was that I needed to get involved in music, art, and dance, and that was it. And I didn't realize that I had had an out of body experience at the time. It was so subtle. When I looked back 3 years later, I saw very clearly that about two or three different spiritual beings took me out of my body and showed me like the a big area, like of maybe half the size of a football field, where women were doing dance in one area, they were doing music in another area, and art in another area. And they were telling me, you are so left brain. You need to get involved in art, music, and dance to come out of, to, you need to get yourself, by the bootstraps. You have to pick yourself up and start over or start anew.
Right.
So I was lit. It all of a sudden, I had limited myself. I would not date women who were not Jewish, and all of a sudden that didn't matter anymore. And I started meeting people and going out with a few other women, and slowly, it was still very painful and embarrassing for me, but basically then I I became the feeler. And about a year later, when I was in graduate school at Ohio State, I picked up the book from a friend. He loaned it to me. It was called Narcissus and Goldmund by Hermann Hesse. I don't know if you've heard of, but he's one of the most famous authors of the early 70s, that everyone was reading Hermann Hesse. they named a band after one of his books, Steppenwolf.
Okay.
And then the other book that was one of the most famous books was Siddhartha,
Okay.
which was it was a story about a young man who was who grew up in a Brahmin family, and then he became a traveling sadhu and lived in the woods for 3 years, and then he came back into the woods and met this lady who became his concubine. Her name was Kamala, and before that, that was the only Kamala I'd ever heard of, and now the whole name has been sullied forever. But basically, she was like a woman of great wisdom, and said, "I think you can get a job." And he went to the merchant and the merchant said to him, "What traits do you have so I, as a merchant, can hire you?" And he said, "Well, I can fast, I can meditate, and I can wait." And those are great, great spiritual qualities.
So you really connected with this author, Herman Hesse. Would you say that was like a transformation in your life
Well,
after reading that?
that book, Narcissus and Goldmund, and then I read Politics of Experience by Ronald Lang, also given to me by my friend. And then I was at his house one day, and I found this book by Be Here Now, Ram Dass. It was the middle section of it, and that explained what was going on.
Okay.
And so yeah, the books I really was not a reader of books because I was a mathematician. I was solving math problems. That was my great joy.
Right.
Women, baseball, and math. Those are the three things I like the most.
Yeah,
And
I'm an avid reader. I've probably read 3,000 books, if not
wow.
more. Yeah, I love books. So, but math was not my forte. So you were using a different part of your brain.
Yeah, so I was left brain and I needed to become right brain. So the book Narcissus and Goldmund, it's really about, it's like the the feeling thinking qualities. I told a friend of mine who happened to be a dancer about 6 months later, or 8 months later, I said, "I found the secret of life. All you need to do is feel," because I was a
Right.
thinker. And she says, "I don't know about that. I've been a feeler all my life. I think I need to think more." And that was like when a bill turned on. I said, "Oh, okay, maybe that's not correct for everyone."
Right.
And so, and I liked, as a mathematician, I like getting universal principles. I generalize, but see, everyone is different, and that is one of the great spiritual principles, to allow people to have the experiences they need to. It's not honor thy mother and father. No, no, you want to honor everyone. You want to
Right.
honor.
And I believe you have friends that you try to help and give advice. You can't interfere with other people's soul's path and lessons. So you have to let them do what's right for them. But as far as the feeling, I wrote a book, Intuitive Heart. You are guided in your whole life by your feelings. It's your connection to everything, how you feel, and especially how you are guided in your heart and in your intuition.
Yeah, it's remember in Star Wars, Luke, turn off the computer. Luke, listen to your feelings. I don't know if I'm misinterpreting that, but that's what I heard. you
Right,
and you need to, I mean, it's all about being in the present moment.
right,
And we have to almost trick ourselves into getting into the present moment. And that's sort of like a secret I was given while meditating in 1997. The name of my new company, my health food store, and also um, the way to get there. And they said momentum. And then they said taking advantage of the moment. And at first, I didn't like the word momentum because it was a rather mundane word.
hmm
And then when they said taking advantage of the moment, I realized, my gosh, momentum comes from the word moment. That's
right,
magical. And
right,
then as I'm trying to visualize my new stationery, I said, something's missing, like in the Wendy's commercial where the 81-year-old lady said, "Where's the beef?" And so then they said, "Propelling yourself into greatness." I said, "Wow." And then the third eye closed and it was empty. I was looking at a paradisical lake where there was a volcano, and out popped a little lottery ball with the word momentum on it. And I heard the voice saying momentum. And then it said, the voice said, taking advantage of the moment. And then when I questioned again, then it said propelling yourself into greatness. And then the third eye became totally black again instead of looking at this beautiful lake. And so, see, taking advantage of the moment is the secret. And that's living in the moment and listening. You're vigilant, you're in the jungle, and you have to be aware of tigers and all sorts of stuff. So your antenna is up while you're totally engrossed in the moment. And that's sort of like the dichotomy. And when you're listening to your heart, like I asked someone, what does it mean to listen to your heart? I said, well, it's like listen to your feelings. They said, oh. And so basically, when you're listening and this new wave comes, you step in front of that wave and it propels you into greatness. And then
Right.
there's a famous book called Practicing the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. It was probably written in the 1880s or early 1900s. I'm not sure. It's an 80-page book. And this phrase, momentum, taking advantage of the moment, propelling yourself into greatness, that's basically what the 80 pages is talking about. It's learning to practice the presence of God. And that's when you're living in the moment. You're totally like the book Steppenwolf by Herman Hesse is all about that. He claimed to be a Steppenwolf. He was an intellectual, and he couldn't stand the bourgeois, yet he honored the bourgeois. It was just someone appreciating their plants, a mundane life, like where the place where he was renting, the woman who he probably lived in the third floor of this place, and yet he got joined into a jazz club where the lady sort of like spiraled him in, and it said in the book Steppenwolf, price of admission is your mind. You have to mind to use your mind. Only madmen may enter. And it's all about like the poet Rumi and Shamsai Tabriz. You have to be mad almost to go against all conditioning of society and just break through
Right.
and be who you are.
I feel like it's allowing and surrendering to your authentic self and allowing yourself to be guided no matter what anyone else says you should be doing. You know what you should be doing.
Yes, yes. And you have this inner guidance. And I remember, realizing shortly after my out of body experience, within a year after, that reason comes after the fact. I would tell myself, reason comes after the fact. When inner guidance says do it, excuse the expression, you got to fucking listen and do it. And later on, you will understand why. So
Right.
when that inner guidance prods you, pushes you, guides you, like I like the word gently prods you, then you simply do what you need to do. It's like in the book, The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge by Carlos Castaneda. Don
Uh-huh.
Juan said you have to find your spot.
Right.
And the only way to find your spot is you have to get into the moment, get still, listen. And I do this by, a lot of times I just quit breathing. That's how I listen. I quit breathing. Or sometimes I push my tummy out and refuse to breathe until that gentle nudge comes, and then it starts breathing me. And
Right.
that's the surrender. So
Right. And I feel like when you get those flashes of insight, I call it infused knowledge that just comes to you. You don't know how you know, but you know. You need to act on that right away because it came to you for a reason.
Absolutely. It's
And a lot of miraculous things happen when you receive it, you allow it, you surrender to it, but then you put action to it. And that's when doors and synchronicities really happen in your life.
I like a Paul Twitchell phrase that I read many in the early 70s. He said, feeling impregnates thoughts with action. So if you have a thought, you either have to ignore it and not feed it, not water it, or you have to give it passion. And when you give passion or feeling to a thought, and then the willingness to not have it happen is the secret that they miss, that they didn't mention in the movie The Secret, is the willingness to not have what you want is sort of like is the secret key to manifesting whatever you want. Because yeah.
Yeah, you don't know how it's going to happen. You allow it to happen, and you don't have preconceived thoughts of what it's going to look like. You allow it in, and you follow your instincts and your intuitive inklings and nudges, and it all works out.
Yeah, it's the trust factor.
Right.
You know, and then you trust. It's like in the Conversations with God book, it says you can't ever have what you want. And they don't explain why that's true. But basically, if you want something, you're picturing yourself generally not having. And so it's what you picture is what you get when you give it passion.
Right. When you have passion, you know it's going to happen. You don't know how, but
Yes,
you know it will be,
that's
period.
right. Yes.
And you just be, and it happens. And can you share with our listeners your Kundalini Awakening experience? What did that look like and feel like?
Okay, well, it was a different kind of a Kundalini awakening than I guess every Kundalini awakening is unique. I read the book by Gopi Krishna, and that helped me a lot understand what had happened. And it was all about, I think the title of the book was Awakening Kundalini. Uh, and I basically was getting really, really mellow after a year and a half, and I was learning, to always, like there you are, and I don't know anything. And so, maybe I see some woman sitting by somewhere and I want to meet her. I'm on the oval, and I would just get to the moment to find my spot. And I never knew what to say, and I hated canned pickups that men have. And so I would get in the moment, and then all of a sudden I would say whatever came to me. So anyway, I'm at the Oval in this frame of mind. It's the most humble that I've ever been in my lifetime, and I'd reached the pinnacle of that in terms of humility, really listening. And so I'm at the Oval in front of the graduate a library at Ohio State University in my first year of graduate school, where I just finished one year. It's summertime, and some yogi, he's about 6'6" tall, 6'8", and he was just wearing yogi pants. He said, "Hey, what's going on in town tonight? Do you know anything?" And I instantly said, "I didn't know." And then all of a sudden, I sat and thought, and to really answer the question correctly. And I still didn't know, but we got into talking. We talked for about 20, 30 minutes. And since he was so tall and I'm about 5'7", my neck got a little tired looking up at him. And so then we walked over to my apartment, which was about, half a mile away. And so then he said, "Well, try this technique." Because he had had a dream, and in the dream he realized he knew more. He was the teacher of the current master who succeeded Yogananda at Self-Realization Fellowship. And in the dream, he realized he was his teacher's teacher in another lifetime. And so he realized that teacher really couldn't offer him anything. So he was on his way to Europe looking for another teacher.
Mhm.
So anyway, he says, "We'll try this Kundalini thing that usually when you're a fifth initiation, in Kundalini yoga, they give you that exercise. So we did it about 30, 40 times. We put a mattress underneath on the floor, and I would do this kind of motion. I would do this and look up into my third eye and chant Om, and then I would be hit by, he called it bluing out, not blacking
Hmm.
out. And my whole body would be, would fall and hit the bed. And then we did this about 20, 30 times. And then he left for a while, and then he came back and did it a few more times. And my whole body was filled with, every single cell was electrified. It was like, it's funny because when I'm in the relax sauna now, which is the sauna I promote, it's like, and it feels like that tingling sensation when I'd be meditating all the time back in the 1971 and 72 is you could feel and hear all this energy, this of all your cells vibrating.
Right.
And so basically the next day, I remember looking over, I was in some building, and I was looking out and said, hardly anyone knows what I know. Oh my God. It's like, and before that, after I'd had my out of body experience, and about 3 months later, I'm in Chicago for the summer with a cushy job working for the AC Nielsen company. They put out the Nielsen TV ratings, and I was like an overpaid clerk as a summer intern, and I had lots of free time, and so
Right.
I was just going out there. I said, okay, I don't know a damn thing. I'm not street smart. I got a college degree, an honors degree in mathematics, and I don't know anything. And everyone else in the world does but me. And I couldn't believe that I was the only one in the world that didn't know what life was about because everyone else did. And I was determined to join the rest of them. And now all of a sudden it's backwards. I'm one of the few who know what I know, this is
Right.
1971. Wow. And with 3 days later, I ate a steak, and I was comatose for about 6, 7 hours. And,
Wow.
uh, uh, and then I ate a ham steak another 3 days later, and the same thing happened. And I had to meditate for 6, 7 hours just to get my mind to function. And so I didn't know what to do, and I was fasting. I didn't, I didn't, I said, well, and I started doing grapefruits and brown rice. And I went to the health food store. I found about the word Goda Cola. I found out about the herb ginseng. The guy said that he recommended I fast. And so I started fasting. And I never fasted before in my life. But boy, I was doing my morning meditation and yoga and those kriyas. I was doing that for about 6 hours every morning from about 6 a.m. to noon before I felt connected enough where I could feel that presence. I would not go out into the world unless I felt that presence. And then finally, after I think a month or two, I went out not feeling that presence. And I was at 16th and High Street, and I ran into some friends, and they said, God, you look great. And I felt the worst of the worst because I was in my body. That's why they thought I looked great, because I was in my body. And I felt
Right.
awful because I didn't feel connected. And that's when I realized that knowing is more is it you don't have to feel the presence of God every moment. Heck, you can hardly live your life if you're always feeling it. You just have to know it's there, and when you need it, it will be there.
Right.
And
You would be completely blissed out all the time and not be able to function if you were in that state.
yes, right, exactly.
And and I know for me that how you experienced all of your cells vibrating. I had a near-death experience, and when I thumped back into my body, I felt my heart just shooting love and light out of my heart that encompassed my whole being. And I felt so alive that it changed me forever, and it increased my intuitive abilities. But just like you said, that vibrating of your cells and that aliveness, and the connectedness and realizing that you're whole and you're unconditionally loved. So I'm sure there's listeners out there that are trying to figure out their life and their soul's path, but meditation is a great way to slow down, to quiet the mind, and to listen, as well as yoga practice. I know you mentioned you enjoy essential oils too.
Yeah.
Do you feel that and help enhances spirituality also?
Well, I haven't utilized essential oils personally as much as I could. It's
Okay.
always the knowing of this. I basically was using Chinese herbs, reishi mushroom, shiitake mushroom, green powders, and doing a lot of fasting. Eventually, I got into in 73, I got into the master, or 76, I got into the master cleanser, the lemonade diet, lemon juice, maple syrup, and cayenne pepper, and about 8 ounces of water, hot or cold. But I was basically I was living on dates, cashews, and figs for about 80% of my diet for about a year. For
So
about
not to interrupt, but the mixture that you just mentioned with cayenne pepper, can you say that again? Did that raise your vibration?
It really cleansed you. The Stanley Burroughs wrote a book called The Master Cleanser. He also wrote
Okay.
a book called Healing for the Age of Enlightenment. And it's two tablespoons of lemon juice, about half of a lemon, 2 tablespoons of pure 100% maple syrup, and then about a tenth of a teaspoon or a dash of cayenne pepper in either hot or cold or warmer. I usually put it in with cold water, and then I put enough hot water in to make it nice and warm. Warm.
Okay.
You can also drink it cold, but I fasted on that for 3 days, 7 days, 14 days, one day, and that's my reset. A lot of times that's my reset when my body gets when it's just not working perfectly. My mind is not working perfectly. Everything is always perfect, but where I'm having trouble functioning.
Right, your perceptions.
Yes, right. So that would be a reset. It's like rebooting your computer. That's
Okay. And
yeah.
obviously, I'm not a doctor. Check with your doctor about fasting and what's right for your body with your medication. But I know you like the infrared saunas. Can you give our listeners some of the benefits that you've seen from the saunas?
Yes. It's I was using I discovered the far infrared sauna in 2001, and I bought one from one of my massage tool suppliers. I started a business, a health food distributing business, where I would sell to health professionals and health food stores. I would sell massage tools, and I was selling green powders, essential oils, Chinese herbal combinations, and um, chlorine dioxide, and spirulina, chlorella, all the nutrients that are super packed and give you energy with a minimal of substance. But and that's what I was looking for. In other words, I was one of the original biohackers, always looking for uh, to feel mentally tuned in, uh,
Right.
and from a heart centered. Like I quit doing coffee in 19 after I had my out of body experience. I couldn't drink coffee anymore. It made me too nervous. And
Okay.
my body chemistry started changing. I remember at that time I could drink 4 ounces of orange juice, and right around then I'd get a stomach ache. And then eventually I was able to work it up to where I could do a quart of orange juice and not get a stomach ache. And so I realized that I had to get my body up to snuff to match the spiritual understanding that I got when I was meditating and tuning in. And this is before the Kundalini Awakening. And I really had trouble doing math. It just, I mean, I just didn't want to. And I remember
Right.
when my math advisor said, because we decided to let me switch in graduate school and take philosophy and psychology courses or whatever I wanted for a year. And then at that time, I would resign my fellowship, or I would come back into the math department. So I was getting a year sabbatical, you could say. And he was saying, and Phil, you have to have discipline. And that's when another great awakening happened. It's the difference between self-force and discipline. Discipline is when you apply inward pressure to get yourself to do what you really, 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 really want to do. Self-force is when you apply inner pressure to get yourself to do what you don't want to do, or what you no longer want to do, even though in the past it was your passion. It no longer is, because the rules have changed. It's like in mathematics, you took out a premise in a problem or a given data. It's like it no longer applies. But it's like a deck of cards. It's based on false premises that you no longer believe, that you no longer desire, and therefore the whole equation goes kaput. And so that's why, probably one of the reasons why the name of my book, coming forth in the next month or so, is Pictures of the Mind. And the subtitle,
I love it.
yeah, and the subtitle is Freeing Yourself from Beliefs That No Longer Serve You. See, belief is spelled BELIEF. So every belief is just a lie, because
Right.
the only thing that's really true is I am, it is, God is. Everything else is a half lie and a half truth. And so, it's like, it's not whether something is true or not. It's whether it moves you, it makes you more free. The idea of what I say or a statement, if that lifts you by breaking up your thought patterns, or helping you let go of a limited belief that is no longer true. So it's not whether something I say is true or false, it's how it is true, because everything is true. When someone speaks a truth of their religion, and that has a normal meaning, and you see beyond the meaning to the real meaning, I now embrace, no matter what religion you're talking about, no matter what thought or feeling you're expressing, I see that you're speaking your truth. It is true for you. And I can see more and more the depth of what you're saying, and I could agree with it, even though I don't agree with the normal interpretation. Like a Christian will say, you only have one life, therefore, well, yes and no. It's like, honor thy parent, mother, honor thy father and mother. Yes and no. So when you only have one moment, and that's now. Reincarnation is a very, very clumsy way. It's true, but it's not true in the sense that everything is happening at the same time, because there is no time and space. Everything is a mock-up. So when they say you only have one lifetime, they're really saying you only have one moment, and that's
Right.
now.
Right.
And so I see how it's true. And so, when in the past, because of my limited understanding of how the universe works, of my own understanding, I would question. I would say, well, no, that's I would not say to them, because it's not proper, and they're all excited. But it is a principle that there's only one moment, and that's now. And so I see how it's true.
So that's exciting for your book, Pictures of the Minds. When do you expect that to be out?
I'm planning for it to come out within the next 2 months.
Okay.
I keep on pushing it back, and I keep on getting distracted.
And when will that be where will that be available? I mean,
It'll be available on Amazon somehow.
on Amazon.
Yeah,
And then if our listeners want to contact you, is there a website that they can go to?
yes, I have 3 websites. One is picturesofthemind.com. The other is philipawilson.com, and Philip is spelled with 2 L's. And then my website for my business is relaxsaunas with an S.com, relaxsaunas.com. but people can call me right now. I'm still take phone calls.
Oh,
It's
okay.
and I still take emails. My email is phil@relaxsaunas.com. And my cell phone number, I live in Las Vegas. But my cell phone number is a Pasadena, California phone number near LA. It's 626 200 and then 8454. And
All
that's
right.
my,
I will also, I'm
yeah,
sorry, I'll also put those in the notes so our
yeah.
listeners can like easily link to you. So then one final question. What do you feel your soul's path in this lifetime is at this present moment?
Well, because of my degree in mathematics and the fact that I have a pretty good mind, the and if you look at my astrology chart, you see I have a north node in the third house. uh, I came here to teach communication. In other words, like what we're doing right now. I came here to help people feel good about where they're at, to honor the moment, to get into the moment and realize that, like, I thought I messed up my whole life by studying math for 10 years. And I was drawn to hearing about Bertrand Russell, who was a mathematician and a social activist. Lewis Carroll wrote Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, and he was a mathematician. And Pythagoras was a great mathematician, the father of modern mathematics, but he was also a spiritual teacher. And he was known, believe it or not, as the son of Apollo, which is saying he was known as the son of God. And he had a mystery school where he talked about the music of the spheres, the inner sound you listen to, that you travel back into the heart of God. And so
Right.
basically my mission here is to let others know that they can be spiritually free, that the world of time and space is sort of like Maya. It's an illusion, but it's a mock-up, and we gain experiences through being in the moment. And it's just it is what it is you learn to allow. For example, I've discovered recently that the worst thing in the world you could do is to judge. And I found the antidote to that. It's observation, which comes from the word observe, which comes from the word serve. So when you switch from judging to observation, you're serving the divine, because that's all you can serve. And a good example of that is when you're looking at a sunset, you say, oh my gosh, instead of saying how beautiful it is, a judgment would be, I think the orange should go with the purple. And there's a dark lining in every judgment that you don't find in an observation, and that's called the complaint. And so instead of complaining about what wasn't, you learn to enjoy what is. So it's always getting to the moment. And that's why, see, when you get in the relaxed sauna, that activates the parasympathetic nervous system. And so you feel like you're being loved by the divine, or hugged by a loving grandma. And by getting involved, by actively being into the present moment, I have a definition of pain, and it's the awareness of time. Have you ever hurried? Have you ever worried? Have you ever waited? All those are involved in time. And there's a book that Paul Twitchell wrote back in the early 70s. It was called The Talons of Time. And the evil ones in the book were called, and this you'll enjoy, is the time makers. So in other words, it's all about learning to bypass time and to get into the present moment, and the absolute reliance on inner guidance. And even and when the Christian becomes a Jesus freak and says, tells his friend, don't do drugs no more. Well, he used the drugs to get there. So you honor people. It's not honor their mother and father. You honor everyone, by allowing them to have their experiences, because who are you to know what they should be doing? And if people,
Exactly. Each soul has to walk their own path. Exactly. Well,
and
I
if
want to thank you
okay,
so much,
yeah,
Philip, for being
yeah.
on the Healing Soul podcast. It's been very intriguing, and I can't wait for your book to come out.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And I always pick an intuitive heart oracle card. And today's card is opportunities are waiting ahead. No wonderful things are in your future. Keep going and moving forward toward your opportunities that have your name on them. Claim your success. Opportunities are waiting ahead. I want to thank everyone listening to the Healing Soul, and thank you once again, Phillip. And hit the follow button and share this episode with a friend. The Healing Soul, empowering wellness and oneness. God loves you, and so do I. Thank you.